Tonight's Committee of Adjustment hearing is being held by video conference and live streaming video in the town's live stream web page at oakville.ca. This is a hearing to consider applications for minor variances and consents held under the authority of the Planning Act. Please keep in mind that the intent of this process is to review the committee, listen to the evidence, and then make a decision. This process is not intended to be used to resolve any concern may exist between the town, individuals, or organizations. If a request for a deferral is made and the committee grants such a request, the applicant or authorized agent must contact the Secretary Treasurer to schedule a new hearing date. In order to conduct an effective and efficient electronic hearing, we have adopted the following process. If you are watching the live stream of the hearing on oakville.ca and if you wish to speak to an item on the agenda, you can call 905-815-6095. Again, 905-815-6095. The phone number is also posted on the screen below the live stream page at oakville.ca. Staff will be standing by to take your call, and when you do call in, staff will take your name and number and item that you wish to address. Instructions will be provided to call back and join the video conference. When the chair of the committee polls for interested parties, the Secretary Treasurer will unmute you when it is your time to speak. The applicant or agent will then be given the opportunity to briefly explain to the committee the basis of the application and answer any questions that may arise. A maximum of 5 presentation. You will need to state your name and address for the record, and any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the discretion of the committee. All delegations must also state their name and address for the record, and the 5 minutes period will be made for the presentation. All remarks and questions are to be directed to the chair. Any submissions beyond the 5 minutes will be at the applicant or agent will then be provided with a further 5 minutes to provide the comments made by interested parties and answer any questions from the committee members. If the applicant or agent has any concerns found in staff report, particularly with proposed conditions, this will be the opportunity to advise us. The matter will then be taken into committee for a decision, and this will mark the end of all. Any person desiring a notice of a decision or an application must provide a written request, preferably through email, to the Secretary Treasurer. Please note that you must make a written request in order to be included on the list that is used by the Ontario Land Tribunal for giving any subsequent notice of appeal. Written notice of the committee's decision will be mailed no later than 10 days for minor variance and 15 days for consents to the applicant, agent, and any other person who filed a written request for such notice. If you do not agree with the committee's decision, you may appeal this to the Ontario Land Tribunal, and the last day to do so will be noted on the decision. If no appeal is received within the prescribed time frame, the decision of the committee becomes final and binding, and the Secretary Treasurer will then notify the applicant and anyone who received a copy of the decision through written correspondence. People participating in this hearing are to be courteous to and respectful of the members of the committee, town staff, and any other person participating in the electronic hearing. Tonight's electronic hearing is being video recorded and available in future viewing at oakville.ca. Thank you. We have one regret this evening, Ms. Judy Murray, and at this time I'll be asking for declarations of pecuniary interests. I have a note for a declaration of pecuniary interest from the last meeting, July the 19th, Mr. Ian Flemington for CAV 120-2022 at 3518 Wycroft Road.
Yeah, I actually need Member Flemington to actually proclaim that into the meeting now, as opposed to, sorry, as the chair reading it out.
So, Madam Chair, I do have a conflict with regards to the application that was mentioned due to the relationship with the applicant being in competition with the one of the clients that my owners represent.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is that sufficient for you, Ms. Secretary Treasurer?
That's perfect. Thank you very much.
Okay. The next item on our agenda or withdrawals of applications. I'll be taking requests for deferrals at this time. Madam Secretary Treasurer, please invite whoever has their hand up to speak at this time.
Okay, and would you like me to move them all at once, or should I go by in order as the
Whoever is suitable, it's fine with me.
okay.
Good evening, Madam Chair and fellow committee
Good evening.
members.
Good evening.
My name is Addison Milne Price of Design Plan Services, Inc. at 900 The East Mall, Suite 300, Toronto, M9B 6K2. We have been retained by the property owners of 241 Cherry Hill Road as the agent of this application.
And just for public record, this is for CAV 140 of 2022 at 241 Cheryl Hill Road. Go ahead, sir.
Thank you. As stated in my formal deferral request letter submitted to committee staff, I would like to request a deferral of this application. Deferral will allow us to have more time to consult with planning staff with respect to concerns they indicated in the staff report released on September 9th.
Perfect, thank you. The staff, I'm in your hands. All those in support of a deferral. Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience for the next available date.
Thank you. Good evening.
Have a good evening. Madam Secretary Treasurer, I'm assuming you're doing them in order.
Yes, I thought that would be the most efficient way. I have Mr.
Okay.
Claus in the meeting now.
Hi, my name is Stephen Kloss. I'm planner with Glenn Schneider and Associates, and I'm the authorized agent for the owners of 2063 Vickery Drive, which is item 6.3 CAV 142/2022. And I'm
Thank you,
requesting,
Mr. Claus.
I'm requesting to defer the application as with the previous one, so we can have further discussions with the town staff to discuss the concerns they had in their staff report.
Very well, thank you. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience. Have a good evening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay. CAVA 144 of 2022 at 1362 Devon Road.
I have the agent and the homeowner attending.
Ms. Regina, I think you're muted. I see your hand. I do not see your camera on, but I do see your hand.
There we go. Sorry, my apologies, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, my name and committee members, my name is Johnny Regina. I'm the acting agent for the homeowners on this property. We're asking for a deferral this evening to meet with planning and discuss our application to come up with a better application. That being said, we're also tied in with Conservation Halton or Halton Conservation. So any changes we make, we would have to coincide with their approvals. Under that basis of working with the planning and conservation, we're asking for a deferral to have a better application submitted.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Jani. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Have a good evening.
Thank you, you too.
Last on the agenda, CAV 145 of 2022 at 50 Stewart Street.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members.
Good evening.
I'd Evangelista on behalf of the owners of 50 Stewart. We are asking for a deferral this evening to allow us the opportunity to meet and have further discussions with planning staff and modify our application.
Okay.
Tonight again.
Sorry?
And it's nice to see everyone again after so long.
Yes, and yourself as well. Thank you, Ms. Evangelista. All those in support of a deferral? Okay, the application has been deferred. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer at your earliest convenience.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening. Anyone who has not written ahead of time and is seeking a deferral or withdrawal of application at this time, please do raise your hand, and the Secretary Treasurer will invite you to speak. Anyone else?
There is no one at this time.
Okay, very well. We'll start the meeting. We have no consent applications. The first item on our agenda is CEV 141 of 2022 at 288 Gloucester Avenue. Again, this is CEV 141 of 2022 at 288 Gloucester Avenue. If anyone is interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095 and staff will be standing to take your call.
Yeah, I have Teresa Howarth as an attendee. It's not permitting me to. She's in there a couple of times. It's not letting me move her in. So just bear with me a moment. There we go. She's in the meeting now.
Hello, I am not actually prepared to speak today. I had thought, given the correspondence that I received, that there was no opposition to our application.
Sorry, is there another device? There's a lot of echo, so sometimes that happens when there are two devices in the same room that are broadcasting the meeting. Ms. Howard, we lost you after saying that you were not prepared to speak today. Ms. McCrae, do you understand what she was trying to say? Is there anyone else who's representing her?
Just let me see if I can move her back into the meeting. Here, she should be back in the meeting now.
Okay, well, let's move on to the next application until on her part. I'm gonna call CAV 143
Sorry,
of
could I-
2020.
sorry, Chair. So do you want me to leave her in the meeting?
No, remove her from the meeting until she figures things out and calls you.
Okay, so just give me a moment. Okay, we should be ready to go to the next item.
Okay, so item CAV 143 of 2022 at 2430 Yolanda Drive. And this is item CAV 143 of 2022 at 2430 Yolanda Drive. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815. I have a Joseph Dong listed as the agent.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. If you'd be kind enough to turn your camera on if possible.
I've been having some technical difficulties, unfortunately, with the camera.
That's fine. Okay, we can proceed. Go ahead.
Yes, my name is Joe Dome, 133 Torresdale Avenue, agent for the owners. The owners would like to construct a new two-story detached dwelling to suit their family livability needs. We've consulted planning prior to applying for a committee of adjustment and have revised the drawings and variances according to their recommendations. Subsequently, the planning staff report supports the two requested variances. Referring to variance number 1 regarding the proposed FAR of 43%, we feel this is a minor increase as no variances are being sought for overall height, eave height, lot coverage, or side and rear yard setbacks. Furthermore, there are a number of properties nearby that have been approved for an FAR of 43% or higher, including right next door at 2434 Yolanda, which was approved for a 43.1% FAR, including a lot coverage variance. A couple others include 2461 Woburn and 2354 Rebecca Street. Variance number 2 refers to the proposed front yard of 6.6 meters. I'd like to highlight that this setback only pertains to the front porch, which has a negligible massing impact, whereas the dwelling itself conforms to the bylaw at a 7.5 meter setback. The owner has had positive feedback from neighbors, including the adjacent. Overall, we feel the application is reasonable and minor in nature, and I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have.
If there's no interested parties that would like to speak to this application, do the members of the committee have any questions for Mr. Dom at this time? I see none. Has anyone called for this application?
There's no one at this time.
Mr. Dom, you said that the neighbor has received positive feedback. Did you get anything in writing from them? Because we have no submissions.
Unfortunately, nothing in writing. We have verbal support.
Okay, very well. Seeing as though no one has called in this evening, we'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having reviewed the applicant's submission, as well as noting that the town staff report is in support of the application. Also having taken into account the presentation by the applicant's agent this evening. Noting that there were no written or oral objections or support from the public, I am prepared to make a motion in favor of the application being approved as applied for, finding that it meets the intent of the bylaws and the Planning Act. And I'd like to include the following 2 conditions. 1, that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated July 12th, 2022. And our second condition, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you.
Madam Secretary Treasurer, has the last applicant, Ms. Hayworth, called back or not yet?
Well, she's raised her hand, if you'd like me to move her back into the meeting.
Okay, sure. So we're back to CAV 141, 2022 at 288 Gloucester Avenue. Again, it's CAV 141 of 2022 at 288 Gloucester Avenue. This application, please call 905-815-6095.
Am I to speak now?
Ms. Hayworth, yes, it's your time to speak.
Yes, thank you,
your
and I
presentation.
apologize. I do apologize for that earlier confusion on my part. I actually had not been prepared to really formally address this, as I had understood, having read the materials that came back from the Committee of Adjustment, that there was no there was nobody that was going to be objecting to the application. Similar to the last individual that spoke, this is an application for a very minor variance to build a pool cabana in our backyard. It will not be visible from the street, and I have spoken to all of my adjoining neighbors, none of whom are objecting in any way, although I do not have that in writing.
Okay, very well. The only submissions you have submitted to the town are your drawings, correct? Does town staff have those drawings just so that we can put them up for the public to have seen them? Very well, thank you. All right. No one has called in. Okay, correct?
There's no one at this time, correct?
Does any member of the committee have any questions for Ms. Hayworth at this time? I see none. Would like to move a motion. Okay, go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the materials, including the written staff report and the brief presentation by the owner of the property, I'm satisfied that the requested 2 variances conform to the tests of the Planning Act, and I will put forward a motion of approval, finding that the proposed pool cabana will have no impacts on the abutting lands. The motion of approval would be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the accessory building be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated March 15th, 2022, and that the approval expires within 2 years of the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. I would note that there were no materials received from the public with respect to this matter.
Thank you. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, Ms. Hayworth. We appreciate your submissions. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Just as a matter of a public note, Ms. Hayworth did mention that she didn't expect to speak. Although we do receive notes from town staff, whether they support or don't support each application, we still have to look at each application at its merit and reference it with our 4 tests as a committee. So each application does have to get heard, no matter how minor it is, and plans be shown, because this is a public forum and the public has a right to see and have heard these presentations. So I thought I'd just make this clear that any application that does come before us will get a time to speak, no matter how brief that may be. That's up to the applicant or agent of each application, how they choose to use their time that's allotted to them. All right, moving on to the next application on our roster this evening is CAV 146 of 2022 at 1134 Truman Avenue. Again, that's CAV 146 at 2022 Truman Avenue. And the number to call is 905-815-6095. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, committee members. Nicholas Duff for the record, Harbordell and Associates. I am the agent for the registered owner of 1134 Truman. We're here this evening seeking a single variance for height, and I'm pleased to say through my discussions with staff that we have reached an accord and we have some support. Under the Planning Act, we have 4 tests that we have to satisfy as planners, and I'm grateful that my client was able to design something that is in keeping with my professional opinion of what is a stable, but not static aspect of the neighborhood character on this street. It's a low density residential, and we're asking for a height that is in keeping with the streetscape and massing of the surrounding neighborhood. And I'd be happy to answer any further questions you may have, recognizing we have staff support, and we're proposing a height and build form that's consistent with the character of this neighborhood. I'm satisfied as a professional planner that we are passing the intent of the zoning bylaw and official plan in this case, as well as desirability and the fact that this request is minor for the committee's benefit. Any questions you have, I'd be happy to answer them.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Dell. Are there any questions or items of clarification, Mr. Dell, at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary, Treasurer, no one has called in with interest for this application or raised their hand.
There's no one at this time.
Very well. We'll take the matter into committee. Who would like to move a motion? Go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'll move that this application be approved as applied for, finding that it meets the 4 tests of the Planning Act, and while on paper the variance looks significant, the 2 meters, I'm satisfied that it's in part technical because of the grades and also consistent with the houses on either side of it. I'd make that approval subject to the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan and elevation drawings dated May 19th, 2022, and that the variance expires if the building permit doesn't issue within 2 years. And I'd also note that there were no submissions from the public.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Talowski. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you and have a good evening.
Thank you, Madam Chair, you as well, committee, and to the staff.
CAV 147 of 2022 at 4 Drive. Again, it's CAV 147 of 2022 at 412 Wildwood Drive. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take your call and provide you with further instructions to join the video conference. I have a Prem Tawari as the agent. Is that correct, Ms. McCrary?
Yes, Madam Chair. My name is Prem Tawari.
Good evening, Mr. Tawari. If you have the capacity to turn your camera on, we'd appreciate that. If not, we'll proceed.
Right. Thank you very much. Yeah, this application is, I'm just going to, thank you. Yeah, we are asking for just one variance for the residential floor area ratio from 41% to 42.8%. and this addition will be at the back of the house. Nothing will be in the front. It won't be overpowering the existing house. The reason we have to do it because the entrance to the house is from inside the garage. That makes the garage totally useless, and the applicant cannot park the car inside. So the proposal is to have the exit or the entrance to the house from the back of the house, and that has translated into additional 1.8% floor area ratio. And I thank planning staff for looking at it and giving their input into this.
Very well. Thank you, Mr. Toor. Are there any questions or items of clarifications of Mr. Tawari at this time? Okay, I see none. We don't have any submissions on record. Madam Secretary, has someone called in for this application?
There's no one at this time.
Okay. You are subject to a development engineering a site plan, correct?
That's right.
Okay. There are no, Mr. Flemington, go ahead, sir.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having conducted my site visit and having reviewed the applicant's written submission, also noting that the town's staff report is in favor of the motion, noting that the comments of the applicant this evening has not had any written or oral objections or support from the public. I am prepared to move a motion in support of the application as applied for, finding that it meets the intent and of the bylaws. I'd like to move it with the following two conditions: that the addition be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated March 23rd, 2022. And secondly, that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you for your submission. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you, sir, and have a good night.
Thank you very much.
Application CAV 148 of 2022 at 1314 Langdale Crescent. Again, it's application CAV 148 at 1314 Langdale Crescent. I will note that we do have 9 letters of support on record submitted. Andre Salama, Mr. or Mrs. Shezlo Soraj, I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing, William Duncan, Rahim Zolgadar, John and Ricky Nuyes, and Aaron Khalid, and Margaret Roberts. I hope I've got them all. If not, yeah. Who is the agent? Mr. Heather, good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chairman, members of the committee. Jason Heater from HDS Dwell on behalf of my clients at 1314 Langdale Crescent. We're seeking a variance, just a single variance for a residential floor area. We've designed a home that meets all coverage, height, depth, and setback requirements. It's been designed to mimic a more traditional 1.5 story dwelling. So that additional GFA is well concealed up inside of that, those sloping roof planes. Planning staff have reviewed and are in support. And as you just read off that lengthy list, we do have 9 of the surrounding neighbors supporting the application. I'm available for any questions whatsoever.
Very well, thank you. Questions or items of clarification of Mr. Heather at this time? Okay, I see none. I don't presume, Ms. McCray, that someone has called in for this application.
There's no one at this time.
Take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle, thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the written materials, having heard the presentation from the applicant, I'm satisfied that the requested variance conforms to the 4 tests of the Act, and I'll put forward a motion of approval. It's a relatively modest addition, increased RFA, and it's a very sensitively designed building with sloping roof forms. So I think this will have no impact upon the adjacent neighborhood or excessive massing. So that motion of approval should be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated February 15th, 2022, and that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a permit has not been issued. And as noted by the chair, there were 9 letters of support submitted with respect to this matter.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion about this recommendation? See none, all those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, members of the committee. Have a good evening.
Okay. AV 149 of 2022 at 269 Chartwell Road. AV 149 at 2022-269 Chartwell Road. If you're interested in speaking to this application, please call 905-815-6095. Staff will be standing by to take assistance to join the video conference. For this application, I will note that we do have 2 letters of support on record from a Mr. Joraib and a Mr. or Mrs. Tim Diamond. And the agent is Mr. Hicks. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the committee. I think if you can put our presentation up there, I will be fairly brief. This is an application on Chartwell Road for a new house. It's requiring 2 variances. We've, as usual, worked quite closely with planning and zoning to try and make sure we've got the right mix on this. And the 2 variances, if we can go to that first page, are for the maximum dwelling depth and the residential floor area. The residential floor area is 29, required is 29%, we're 29.74, and the maximum dwelling depth is 20 meters, and that we're 23.8. We can go to the next page, which is the site plan. You'll note in yellow, the yellow tone there, that's the area that exceeds the maximum depth. It is a 1-story structure that exceeds that depth. It is substantially set back from the side yard setbacks. If you look at the houses that are adjacent, we've tried to set the house so it's positioned somewhat centered on the adjacent houses. But the house that's on the right does have a covered porch that extends back further there, so it's actually deeper than our house. And the one on the left is substantially set back from the side yard. The other variance, as I say, was for gross floor area. It was fairly minor. If you go to the front elevation, or even go one more drawing if we can to the, until we get the front elevation portion of it. That one there. So we've intentionally dropped the roof line, so it's not a full 2 stories. The garage does not require a projection variance, but it's a 1-story roof with dormers cut into it. The other portion of the house is 2 stories. We originally were seeking a variance slightly for heights, but we have worked together and brought that down, so it does comply. And as mentioned, there's 2 letters of support, and I know planning is in support of the application, but I'm certainly open to any questions or comments from the committee. We think it certainly meets the tests. We think it certainly meets the intent of the infill design guidelines as well. And I thank planning for their efforts that we've made to bring about an application that certainly meets their requirements, and hopefully it meets with your approval as well. So. Otherwise, open to questions, Madam Chair. So.
Thank you, Mr. Hicks. Are there any questions or items of clarification of Mr. Hicks at this time? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in for?
There's no one at this time.
Very well, we'll take the matter into committee. Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle. I'm sorry, Mr. Talowski. Seeing double today.
I'm trying to start with thanking the applicant for providing that 3D drawing. Again, on the surface, it looked like a substantial mass of a building that was seeking to get larger. I'm satisfied, though, that the 2 minor variances are indeed minor. They're very small increases, and given the massing presented in the 3D drawing, I'm satisfied that there's not going to be any impact. It would appear that the neighbors share that opinion, as we have 2 letters of support, have no opposition to this. Madam Chair, I would make the approval, finding it meets the test of the Planning Act, subject to the dwelling being built in general accordance with the site plan and elevations dated July 7th, 2022, and that the variance expire in 2 years if the building permit hasn't issued.
Very well, is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'll be back in another couple of hearings. So.
Yeah, that's true. We've got application CV 2087 at Sancroft Road. Again, it's application CV 150 of 2022 at 2087 Sancroft Road. Is the agent present? Nguyen?
Hello. Yeah, sorry. Good evening, Madam Chair and the committee, just for the members. I am doing the agent for 2087 Sancroft Road, and I would like to go over is like our proposal. Our proposal is like the new single family 2-story. It's like single family dwelling unit, and we are requesting is like 2 waivers. First is like for the floor area ratio from 41% into 46.81%, and the second waiver is like the minimum front yard from front yard on the lot shall be the legal existing effect by the lower is like less than 1 meters. Is our proposal is like 7.07 meters, and I would like to present is like our reason to request that waivers. The first one is like for the floor area ratios. The reason we request that is like somehow if you take a look on our is like floor plan on the ground floor, the most opening area that is the rig 8 hour is like the waiver, and the reason we do that is like we just try to push it is like the second floor further back in order to prevent the massive is like look in the front of the house comparing with the neighbors. And I would like to add more. The reason is like we try to our best to comply, but the lot coverage is like less than 35%. Somehow that's creator is like the floor area ratio is like that is like we already try our best. And the second waiver is that for the front yard, the actually is like front yard is like for that waiver is from the front yard property from the front property to the porch, not to is like the main wall. So basically we just say it's like for entire building we comply with the setback but just for the front porch area is like we object is like in the front yard setback only. So because the reason of that is just we just try to line it up and uniform for the front with the neighborhood only. So I would like is like to have is like your approval from the Madam Chair and committee adjustment give us is like consideration to approve our case.
Thank you, Ms. Yuan. Are there any items of clarification or questions of the applicant at this time? Okay. We have no submissions with respect to this application. Has anyone called with interest to this application? Secretary Treasurer?
There's no one at this time.
Okay, very well. But we can take the matter into committee then, if there are no questions of the applicant. Who would like to move a motion?
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Flemington.
I'll move a motion. Just given the fact that there has been no negative comments presented this evening, either in written or oral, with regards to this application. I'm going to move that the application be approved as applied for. I'd like to note that, sorry, give me a sec here, that it be approved. I need to know what the drawings are. Maybe with the drawings that were submitted with the application.
Madam Chair, the date on the drawings is April 20th, 2022.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Found it faster than I did.
Thank you. I'm working from two computers here. So, you know, as submitted with the drawings, as noted, April 20th, 2022. Finding that it does meet the 4 tests of the Planning Act. And with that condition and with the second condition that the approval expires 2 years from the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Okay, very well. Thank you, Mr. Flemington. Is there a discussion on this recommendation?
Sorry, can I just clarify the condition?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so I just want to make sure so that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the drawings submitted. So you don't want to be specific. You don't want to say site plan or elevations. You just want to say with the drawings submitted with the application dated April 20th, 2022. Is that correct?
Mr. Flemington, if I may, just a friendly amendment that we do say site plan and elevation drawings.
Yes, that was the intent.
Okay. So that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated April 20th, 2022.
Okay.
Yeah.
Correct?
Correct.
Thank you.
I asked if there was a discussion on this recommendation, and I saw a hand up. Yeah, go ahead, Mr. Talowski.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I'm not going to be supporting this motion. Like staff, I don't have an issue with the requested variance for the front yard, but it's a request for 40 meters of additional square footage, and I don't believe the applicant has attempted to in any way mask that increase through the design. I think the design is still too imposing given the increase in the size, and don't believe it meets the intent of the bylaw or is appropriate.
Okay, thank you for your submission, Mr. Talowski. Is there any other comments? Mr. Hardcastle?
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to echo Mr. Talowski with respect to this. I won't spend too much time going over the same grounds, but I have some significant reservations with respect to this south elevation that's going to be exposed along the long depth of the lot. Really will contribute to a sense of height and mass. So I won't be supporting the motion as well.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. All right, so after the discussion, the proposed recommendation that's before us is to approve the application as submitted, subject to the cited conditions. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? The application has, the motion has failed, 2-1. We will have to do another motion. The chair has abstained at this time.
Madam Chair, I'm going to move this application be denied, finding that it does not meet the intent of the zoning bylaw, nor is it appropriate given the increased size and the impact of the massing.
Very well. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? Okay, I see none. All those in support? Okay, all those opposed? Okay, the application has been, sorry, the motion has been approved. Your application has been denied. You'll see the Secretary Treasurer with the new application whenever you're ready. Have a good evening.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair and Committee Adjustment Member. Good evening.
Okay, good evening. The next application on our agenda is CAV 118 of 2022, deferred from July the 19th of 2022 at 1276 Cambridge Drive. Again, it's application CAV 118 of 2022, deferred from July 19, 2022 at 1276 Cambridge Drive. I do have 4 letters of support from a Mr. Muhammad Khan, Madasar Harkani, Marion Blair, and David Behaden. I hope I pronounced all of these very well. Good evening, Mr. Hicks.
Good evening, Madam
You're
Chair.
back.
Members. I'm back. I should probably thank all the deferrals that happened tonight because I thought I'd be here at 10 o'clock. So the residence that was deferred from July, that is a rendering of the proposed residence. It's a bit of a unique lot. Just for interest's sake, this will be, hopefully when it's finished, the second net zero house built in Oakville. It'll be fully net zero. It'll be zero energy use attached to this house. So, but if we go to the variances, there are 3 variances, and I'll explain why we deferred. There's a residential floor area of 29.83 versus 29%, so a reasonable, I think, increase. The minimum front yard, when we look at the site plan, I'll show you why we're doing that, because it seems like a substantial difference from what is required. And the maximum heights, which is fact, we don't exceed height. So if you put it's 9.97, but I'll explain that variance because that was the reason for the deferral. So if we can put up the site plan, what you see in red is the existing house. And if you looked at planning's comments, the existing house is set back quite a bit from the street line here because of the way the street cul-de-sac works, etc. So what we're trying to do is actually bring the house in conformity with the houses on either side. So we're bringing it forward. And it's a lot that also has a stream running through the back, which has some protection areas from Conservation Authority. So we can't push the house any further back, and we're trying to get a reasonable back garden in here. So that's the reason for the front yard. I mean, the requirement was 8.85 meters because the front of the existing house is way back here, and we've tried to move it up so that it does conform with the streetscape character. The gross floor area, as I say, it's a fairly minor addition to it. It really relates to space at the back of the house. But the height requires some description, because the actual house, when you measure it from the center point of the front lot line, is under the required height. But we were told just before the last hearing that they would consider this a through lot because it actually has frontage on Lakeshore Road as well, which means we have to take our second point of height determination from almost in the river at the back. So, which is the center point of the rear lot line. Our interpretation was there's a 1 foot reserve at the back, so it doesn't actually front onto Lakeshore, but zoning didn't agree with that interpretation. So we decided to not argue with them and simply request the variance. But the house itself is under the required height. That's simply because we now have to take an average grade between the front lot line and the back lot line, which is at the back of the lowest section of the property almost. And Lakeshore is set back quite substantially in terms of the edge of the roadway from there. You really can't see. It is Morrison Creek that runs through there, but you don't really see it from the Lakeshore. So those are the reasons for the 3 variances. The residents have been in support of it. We did submit our package to more than those 4 people. We haven't heard from anyone to state that they had any concerns or objections to it. And we think the house will be an exciting one, and certainly one that fits the character of the neighborhood. And we think the variances are reasonable, and we thank planning again for work that they do with us when we review all of these. I know it takes lots of time, but we were surprised by the through lot interpretation of it. So that's why we deferred it last time. So.
Very well, thank you. Oh, go ahead, Mr.
No,
Hicks.
I'm open to any questions from yourself or the committee. So.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any questions of Mr. Hicks or items of clarification at this time? Mr. Hardcastle, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Through you to Mr. Hicks, you'd indicated that the height, if measured from the center point of the primary road, was lower than the requirement. Do you know what that measurement would be?
I think it's basically right at the required height or within a couple of inches of it. So.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, I see none. Madam Secretary Treasurer, has anyone called in with interest for this application?
There's no one at this time.
Very well. We'll take the matter into committee then.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Go ahead, Mr. Hardcastle.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having undertaken my site visit, having reviewed the written materials, including the staff report, and having heard the explanations from Mr. Hicks, which I will note was very, very helpful in understanding this situation and putting the variances into context, I will put forward a motion of approval, finding that the requested variances conform to the 4 tests of the Act. The motion will be subject to 2 conditions, those being that the dwelling be built in general accordance with the submitted site plan and elevation drawings dated May 25th, 2022, and that the approval will expire within 2 years of the date of the decision if a building permit has not been issued for the proposed construction.
Very well, thank you, Mr. Hardcastle. Is there a discussion on this recommendation? I see none. All those in support? Okay, the application has been approved, none opposed.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, members.
Have a good night.
We'll talk soon. Okay, you too. Take care.
Okay, the next item on our agenda is the minutes to confirm for August 30th. Oh, sorry, Mr. Hardcastle. Thank you for confirming. And motion to adjourn. Thank you. We are adjourned at 8 p.m. exactly.